Live, work, or even visit a city where you assume the law is the same on every street. In London, it isn't. 200 yards of Mayfair run on private bylaws written in 1819, enforced by men who can throw you out with no right of appeal, no obligation to explain why. Before the Metropolitan Police existed, the landowner of this arcade built his own force. And when the estate finally showed up 10 years later, the power was not handed back. This is Burlington Arcade. And it isn't a curiosity, it's a working piece of legal infrastructure that never got absorbed. Lord Cavendish, Lord George Cavendish to give him his full name, opened the arcade in 1819. The architect was Samuel Ware. The story you tend to get on walking stalls is that Cavendish was sick of people lobbing oyster shells and rubbish over the wall into the garden of Burlington House next door. That account is traditional, the documented, and it's beside the point either way. What Cavendish actually built was a controlled commercial environment, a private street, gated at both ends, locked at night, its own rules of conduct, its own enforcement. Let's understand the concept. London in 1819 had parish watchmen, Bow Street runners, and not much else. There was no force to call. Policing was something you arranged. Privately, or like most, went without. So, a private street with private officers wasn't eccentric. It was the standard solution. Applied with money for those with money. Scotland Yard arrives in 1829. Public policing expands across the whole country. For the next 2 centuries, and this 200 yards just carries on. I'm working through the places in London where this is still true. There are more than you think. Subscribe and you get the rest of the map. The folks here are called Beadles. The name comes from an old parish office, a minor official with powers of order. Cavendish is credited with recruiting the first ones from his own regiment, the 10th Hussars. Traditional account again, not documented, but it's consistent with everything else about the place. Soldiers providing protection first, retail second. The uniform concept survives. Dark coat, top hat, badge of office. It's easy to read that as theatre for tourists. It isn't. A uniform is a signalling device. It tells you before anyone speaks, they speak from a place of authority, that this ground has an owner and the owner has men on it. They can eject you, not request you leave. Eject you. You're on private land. There is no appeal because there is no public authority in the chain to appeal to. The bylaws are specific and they are strange. No whistling, no singing, no humming, no open umbrellas, no hurrying, no large packages, no baby buggies in trading hours. People see these as quaint. They aren't quaint. Read them as a threat model. Whistling and singing were how street traders and lookouts signalled to each other across distance. Ban the signal, break the coordination. An open umbrella blocks sight lines and covers hands. In a 200-yard glass-covered corridor with 60 shop fronts, sight lines are the same. Sightlines are the entire security system. Hurrying reads as flight. Large packages read as capacity. Every rule removes one component from a theft. Nothing about manners. This is a protocol written in the language of 1819. Still in force now because the geometry of the corridor hasn't changed. There's a second explanation for the whistling ban. The traditional account is that the rooms were above the shops. The rooms above the shops were used for prostitution. And the whistle from an arcade floor was the warning that authority was approaching. Treat that as story rather than record. It's widely repeated and thinly sourced, and I'm always a bit nervous about presenting stories as fact, especially when I get caught out. But note what it assumes, because that part is solid. It assumes an arcade where the ground floor and the upper floor operated under different arrangements and where the warning system ran vertically. A private jurisdiction doesn't just decide what's prohibited.
For partners, yes.
It decides what gets noticed. That's a different power and a more useful one. In 1964, a Jaguar was driven straight into the arcade. Masked men got out, went through the windows of the goldsmiths and silversmith shop, took jewellery and reversed out the far end. Reportedly 35,000, some say 50, which is about £500,000 in today's money. Nobody was caught. Office workers overlooking the arcade pelted the robbers with flower pots and furniture while it was happening. They still got away, nobody was caught. Now, let's see what happens next. It wasn't a public inquiry, it wasn't a change in the law, it was physical barriers at the ends, so no vehicle could ever run that route again. Identify the failure, engineer it out, keep it in-house. No committee, no consultation, no waiting for the state. That could take forever. That's the whole argument for private jurisdiction, demonstrated in one afternoon. It is faster than public law. That speed is what it sells. Here's the thing most people have backwards. We tell ourselves that public authority expanded and absorbed everything private. That the Victorians built the modern state and the old arrangements got swept up. They didn't. They got surrounded and left running. The City of London still has its own police force, separate from the Met. The Inns of Court govern their own ground. The Royal Parks operate under their own regulations. The Palace of Westminster Estate still sits outside the ordinary rules. Middle Temple and Inner Temple are their own liberties. Burlington Arcade isn't the exception, it's the one wearing the hat. There's a map of central London where the rules are not what you assume, and you cross it most weeks without noticing, because private jurisdiction doesn't announce itself, it just quietly declines to be replaced. That map is the next few videos. This is London, the machine. One a week and it's free. 200 yards of Mayfair that still runs on bylaws written before the police existed. Public law grew around for 2 centuries and never took it over. Not because anyone defended it, because nobody had a reason to. The arcade is profitable. Private enforcement keeps it profitable. The rent pays for the top hats, and the top hats protect the rent. It didn't survive because it's charming. It survived because it works. That's how this city actually operates. That is London.